I didn't want to chase an income. I wanted to chase a dream, a legacy. Creating an impact to me is to do something great, and the freedom to actually make a difference, do something that's going to last. Our ability to give back people's time is important. We must answer every phone call within 7 seconds. I think of us as a technology business, distributing finance, our stock capital to people faster than everyone else. You need to learn how to move from being careful to being competent, but at some point in time, master the art where you're not relying on anything else other than just pure competence, and expect that of the people around you. Debt capital is fundamentally exceptional. The ability to actually leverage it and scale up and scale down appropriately as your demand forecasts change, that's just the key. Product diversification is key. It's the essence of why we exist. It's the passion in the organization. The macro market hasn't changed, but we're launching new products. And that innovation and aspiration for doing things differently, and now I have this clear drive of more innovation. It's what I've learned. It's pretty exciting.
I see you've taken the leap, being an entrepreneur. Part of it sounds like to me you just don't want to look back and say, I didn't do it. Ultimately, as a founder, every day there's a new opportunity to be internally entrepreneurial, right?
Travis, if I had to give my younger self the one bit of advice, it would be,
private markets investments are investors can find some real value. I find the best way to learn is learn from someone who's done it before and given it a go. Hi, I'm Travis Miller, host of Grow Your Wealth podcast. Thanks for joining me here today. On these podcast sessions, we're going to talk through how certain investors have navigated the bumpy road of investing, whether it be through business or investments in general. Thanks for listening today. Welcome back to the Grow Your Wealth podcast, where we bring you insightful conversations with industry leaders. I'm your host, Travis Miller, and today we have a very special guest joining us, Clayton Howes. Clayton is the CEO, co-founder of MoneyMe, with over 20 years of experience in financial services, brand development, business strategy, and innovation. Before founding MoneyMe, he spent his formative career at Vodafone Hutchison Australia, and specialised in strategic mergers, management and planning at GlaxoSmithKline. We'll explore Clayton's journey and the key lessons he learned along the way. Without waiting further, let's dive into our conversation with Clayton. Welcome. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, Travis. Great to be here. Thank you.
You've driven an hour and a half from Newcastle this morning.
Yeah, saw countryside, Australia, which is lovely.
That's perfect. All warmed up for this session. So what I like to do is sort of kick off at the start. A lot of our listeners like to understand the backstory, a story they probably haven't heard from you. We start at the beginning. Give us an idea of sort of where you grew up, what you got up to during your days at school, what you enjoyed, and then sort of a little bit of a few steps on how you got to where you are today.
I was born in Zimbabwe.
Yep.
I spent most of my years living in England and Australia. I loved sport, family-oriented guy. My family now mostly reside here in Australia, which is fabulous. I studied at Oxford Brookes. I studied economics and law.
Great.
Useful fundamentals and foundational things that I never thought were going to be, partly responsible for where I am today. Decided to become an entrepreneur in Australia because the entrepreneurial spirit here was really obvious. And let's be real, like living in England, when you go to Australia, the sun, the ambience, the energy is just electrifying. It's an entrepreneurial's dream.
Yeah.
And that's where I began, and I'm sure there's going to be more about that soon.
Yeah, it's good. So what was the sport of choice?
It started with, believe it or not, my worst sport for a guy like me and you was a bit heavy in the legs is squash. And I took squash to a state level, which was great. And then, of course, rugby, where I'm from, that's still the known sport. But the real rugby, one where no one watches, one that no one watches anymore, something about All Blacks and all that.
The one that wasn't on last night.
Wasn't that kind. Yeah.
It's good. It's interesting squash. You don't see many squash courts anymore.
No, they're gone.
All turned into apartments, probably.
That's right.
Yeah. And how'd you end up in Australia? Just the family came down, or you made the call yourself?
It was a combination of a few things. So Zimbabwe was like the land of Australia where opportunity was great, and then things started changing, and agility and disruption was part of people's day-to-day lives, and Australia was very similar to what we grew up with positive ambience, opportunities, like-minded people. And so it became a natural home for us to settle in. And when my family came out here, I decided to join them, and, best decision I've ever made.
That's great. And talk about school quickly. What were you like at school? Were you a good student? Any subjects you liked?
Yeah, I've been looking at my son in the eyes and, telling him the things around, this is what you should be doing. You should be focused. You should be, listening to them, doing your homework. I was none of those things. I will say I got a bit lucky. Somehow it all came together at the end. And I loved school for, the connection with people. But some of the fundamentals, I think I just didn't quite believe in. We were brought up in a very clear religious based school. And clearly today, there's more than just one religion that exists out there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, it's good. I mean, economics law is a good background, right? You think about if you do a course you could do when you don't really know what your next step is.
Yeah.
A bit of legal studies, a bit of economics. It makes a bit of sense.
Yeah, truly. Foundations, you never know, right? But when I read about tariffs and, things and, foreign exchange fluctuations, and when you're listed in your public market, that makes absolutely no sense about anything. Some of those background fundamentals actually do help.
Yeah, supply and demand.
Yeah, that's it.
All those silly little charts we used to have to draw.
Yeah, that's right.
Fair enough. And now we moved to career. So you obviously went to university, got a reasonable degree, maybe didn't enjoy it as much as others studying. What happened with the career? Where did it start?
Yeah, I was fortunate. I got a stint in GlaxoSmithKline and, economics and technology were a thing for me, and I continued to pursue that path where economics, accounting, technology at Vodafone was absolutely sensational career opportunity for me. Yeah. And there was this interesting thing where I learned a lot along the way, and I learned about big, bold brand challenger, to convention, and I just loved that. That experience for me all started coming together where you got these fundamentals of economics, but also this bold opportunities to do something a bit different was really what those two organizations gave me a chance to give a crack at.
Yeah, I mean, I can see the connection between the Vodafone and MoneyMe. It's sort of that big brands, broad market segment that you're targeting.
Yeah.
I can see it as a pretty nice starting point career-wise.
Yeah, and appealing to that younger demographic, like Vodafone had appealed to that younger demographic, bit ambitious, something similar to where MoneyMe's journey started and is evolving quite interestingly.
Yeah. Hey, if you're enjoying this, please subscribe on whatever platform you're using. It helps us build a community. We want to educate investors, and this is what it's all about. And on that front, how did you jump to ultimately being an entrepreneur and an early mover in the space that you're in from that stable workplace that you're in? Was there a day you woke up, or was it a few weeks, a few years?
I think there were
made the step.
I think there were three fundamental life-changing moments for me career-wise. The first one was stepping off a corporate career into, self-funded, self-motivated, starting from scratch opportunity, I'd say. The second one was raising capital and listing a business on the ASX that truly tests everything you've ever learned.
Yeah.
And then the third one was actual real leadership when you're pre-COVID and post-COVID environments in a growth sector.
Yeah.
So a combination of things that I really wanted to do was leave a lasting impact. And for me personally, in a corporate environment, it's difficult to do so. For me, what creating an impact means to me is having the ability to work with who you want to work with, real talent, give people an absolute chance, see people's opportunities and enable them to do something great. And the freedom to actually make a difference, do something that's going to last. Yeah. Making an impact is what I wanted to do. And so it was quite easy for me to step away from the corporate environment. I didn't want to chase an income. I wanted to chase a dream. I wanted to chase a legacy. And for me, that's just, in progress in this journey.
Yeah, got you. It's very good. And it all makes sense as well. When you think about that journey, is there a couple of people that have helped you along the way?
Yeah, definitely. I'd say 3 people mostly. Yep. And that's in the early stages. My grandfather was a farmer and a businessman. guy lived to 96 and he was still teaching me stuff.
Yeah.
And the things that he taught me most were resilience and being responsible. The second is my mum. My mum taught me the values of being compassionate, grit, and believing in yourself.
Yeah.
And then the third person, not personally, but Richard Branson, like the big, bold moves, you know, the license to do something a bit different. It actually just resonated and inspired me from quite an early stage.
Yeah, it's interesting. The family's always there.
Oh yeah,
Always one of those motivating factors.
Yeah,
it's good. And then if you go through that journey, you mentioned before, obviously the listing, stressful. A couple of pivotal moments in that career path.
Things you've learned, I'd say, pivotal parts were, you know, in a hyper-growth business, stuff I really learned, which was do something a bit different, you know, believe in your ideas, give talent the opportunity to succeed, and culture every day eats strategy. I've learned that. And then the other bits I've learned is have the capital structure in place. That's a hard, bumpy road when you don't. And in my experience, when we're in a hyper growth environment and the macro climate altered course without warning, for me, that was a really good learning. Like just get that capital structure in place.
Yeah, gotcha. And so you're talking about the staff in the workplace, empowering them. How does that work in practice? Is it let's just giving them opportunity to fail, or is there sort of any steps you take on that front?
For me, it's about clearly identifying talent and giving them a chance. Sometimes it's stepping out of the way.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time, it's around just creating the opportunity for them to do something that they can't actually see yet.
Yeah.
You know, for them to define, you know, values that makes something that they otherwise think is impossible.
Yeah.
And that stems from, you know, big ideas, enabling them to actually see through challenges and being agile and lateral thinkers.
Yeah.
And when you surround yourself with that kind of talent, you quickly realize that the talent you've got are better than yourself, right? And that's motivating for your own self to just want more and more of that.
Yeah. When I look at the growth of your business, you're clearly doing a lot right. And so some of those steps you're taking, right, employing the right people, empowering them, obviously, you know, driving you the right direction. I'm going to take a step back. You mentioned on capital structure. So some of the people listening, you know, maybe don't understand what capital structure means, because obviously people know MoneyMe as the provider of, you know, credit cards, providers of loans and various funding facilities. What do you mean when you say capital structure?
You know, you can think about all the terminology that makes it, you know, complex and, you know, and the industry that we're in, you know, is filled with complexity. But if you boil it back down to the simplistic nature of this, right, we have simple things. Our stock is money, right?
Yep.
So like most businesses where they build something, you know, they package it up, send it on a box, you know, and send it. They've got to plan ahead. Like they don't know what the demand's going to be for the next 12 months.
Exactly.
In our world, it's money. It's the capital.
Yeah.
Same thing as, you know, stock. Planning for it and getting that science right is the fundamental trick.
Yeah.
You get too much stock, it's a problem. You know, you don't have enough stock, well, that's a potentially a bigger problem. And so for us, when I think about the capital structure, it's about making sure that access to stock, getting the forecasting right is the key element. And then that comes in different forms, right? Equity capital is interesting, right? It's interesting. Debt capital is exceptional. Like that is fundamentally exceptional. If you've got access to debt capital, the cost effectiveness of debt capital, the ability to actually leverage it and scale up.
Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying this episode. If you want to learn more about alternative assets, there's a book here you can read, How You Grow Your Wealth with Alternative Assets. Now back to the episode.
And appropriately as your demand forecasts change, that's just the key.
Gotcha. That's a brilliant analogy. I like the idea of stock, right? Because at the end of the day, you've got customers that need funding for whatever's happening in their personal life, and you need a whole pile of stock, which is the money, to provide that funding to them. So that's a very good one.
Yeah, you know, you got to know your numbers, right?
Yeah.
I've got these customers, you know, 150,000 customers, 30,000 with a credit card.
Yeah.
every day they're doing something a bit different with their credit card.
Yeah.
And if they all decided to spend and gas it today, well, that's not a good thing in many ways. So that's stock management and capital. It's key.
Yeah. Okay, now into why in business. I think you've mentioned earlier quite a passionate description of why you became an entrepreneur and what drives you and what you enjoy. But if we delve in a bit further, like what drives you in business?
The lasting impact is real for me. I really want this legacy to be known for strong leadership, doing things a little bit different, giving talent the opportunity to, do what they otherwise might think is impossible, and actually change people's lives, our customers, that is. Give them something that's got more meaning, more purpose, easier, time efficient. When you mature into your later stages, and I'm far from you and I being our later stages of life, let's be clear. But your later stages of learning, you realize time's your most valuable asset. And the way I reflect that in our world is our ability to give back people's time is important. So when I measure our business, I measure time. The amount of time you might take to be on a phone waiting for somebody to answer. If you are phoning a bank or a telco, there's an hour of your time, your most valuable asset. For us, I measure it every single day, and I measure it by 7 seconds. We must answer every phone call within 7 seconds, at least 80% of the time, every day. Right? I measure that time. When somebody's looking to purchase something and they want to buy a car, and they think about the time it takes to choose to be emotively connected to that car, finance typically takes about 8 times longer. And I want to flip that around. I want finance to be 1/8 of the time it takes to transact with this emotive purchase, which is happening, and technology is enabling that.
It's going to get to, So is that, because that's a pretty impressive stats. Is that because of how much you've invested in technology, or is it technology and people?
Both. Like, people have certainly been the drivers of creating technology. And when we think about our business and what I'm focused on, it's always about technology. It's innovation. I think of us as a technology business distributing finance, our stock capital, to people faster than everyone else. And it's the technology that's enabling us to do that. And what's really interesting is, if I go back 12 years ago, our prime audience was the young, fast adopters of technology. Transacting on your mobile phone 12 years ago was still new. Now we've got the technology savvy customer base and audience, and technology is moving quicker, and which we're enjoying a lot. So time efficiency, technology speed, it's everything to us.
And the AI space, I guess, given how much you've invested in technology, is presumably front of mind, thinking how you use it. It still feels, when I look at, playing around with the Geminis and chat GPTs and different media, it still feels a little bit early for me to implement sort of mainstream. You're still got to be on the front foot, experiment with it, thinking about how you can use it. Is that something that's happening at MoneyMe?
Yeah, it's certainly not perfect in the mass market world. It can get things wrong. But in controlled environments, and you're enabling it using learned algorithms. We used to use AI for our credit decisioning in its organic form, which was effectively mathematical equations, probability testing, but high-powered, that a human would take forever to do. Now it's gone into consuming more information really faster, but we teach and control that information. So we don't have these wonderful biases that are using external factors. We use AI just for fast, high-powered computing power. And we're now able to use AI more effectively to answer communication in languages that, our customer-facing staff
that's good.
are not English first-speaking people. But the language correctness using AI is always correct.
That's
like
great.
It's better interpretation, it's faster, it's making things a little bit more efficient at the front end. So that's really important for us. And we're still relying on the legacy stuff that we created many, many years ago, which is just high-powered algorithmic decisioning.
Understand. Makes sense. Now, some advice. People looking to you, wanting to be entrepreneurial in business. They're working at, working at Westpac or Vodafone, and they want to take the leap. Have you got any tips for them?
Absolutely. I'll start by saying is act fast.
Yeah.
Do it quickly and don't look for permission to have a different way of thinking.
I like it.
Second one, very clear, get the capital structure in place.
Yeah.
Third one, surround yourself with the talent that's going to actually push you hard and push you forward.
Yeah. Something I've picked up from a few points you've made is I see you've taken the leap, being an entrepreneur. Part of it sounds like to me you just don't want to look back and say, I didn't do it. I think that's sort of the motivation has been you wanted to take the risk, you wanted to get out there and you became an entrepreneur and you're kind of continuing that path, right? Ultimately, as a founder, every day there's a new opportunity to be internally entrepreneurial, right?
Travis, if I had to give my younger self the one bit of advice, it would be bolder earlier.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, it's a good one. Yeah, like a lot of people, they do say that, right? I think your first point of you do need some experience. Well, you don't necessarily, right? But it's hard to get up one day and say, I'm going to launch MoneyMe and you've just finished year 12. It's if you get some experience, some lesson, have a few mentors, get a few tips, it's a lot easier to run when you've sort of been at least taught how to crawl. But yeah, I don't disagree.
You know what it is? It's also that, you need to learn how to move from being careful, because you got to start being careful, to being competent. That's, I don't know how to explain that, but you start there just with the carefulness, but at some point in time, master the art where you're not relying on anything else other than just pure competence. And expect that of the people around you.
Yeah, and we're going to touch on this a bit later, but you got to presumably have to be prepared to trip over a few times and get back up and roll along. Yeah, and we're getting to that right now. In fact, what's a couple of things that you think's worked really well during your personal life and career?
I'd say personal life and career, they're combined. It's just complete, utter obsession for the customer, the values that you want, why your purpose still is your true North Star. Just be relentless in that execution. And, in business, it's never failed where just obsessing about the customer, obsessing about the long-term impact that you're going to have. Change your attitude from thinking about years to decades. Yeah. And that, for me, is just the key.
And that focus on customer, do you think you learnt that in the organisation? Because focusing on the customers, a business like yours is a clear goal to have. But do you think you learnt that in an organisation, or think that you learnt that beforehand, or some combination? Like, is it something you chat about in board meetings and management meetings? It's the customer first, what we can do to improve the experience. Is that the mantra?
I mean, we all started there, customer first. Putting it on in every room, at every strategy meeting. Yeah. But it was more than that. When you're the single person that's running a business, because you're employee number one, you get the opportunity to find what's really important. And you start by, why would this person choose, in our case, a bank? Choose us instead of a bank.
Correct.
And you start there, and you can't help yourself but just being customer first. There is no other relevance. So I think that just continues. And when you're challenging, when you're challenging status quo, you're actually just challenging yourself to how this customer thinks about new things. And I think it's just organic. I don't know if it's a learned thing. It's just organic.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, you're tracking 7 seconds. Is the way you look at things. That's a no-brainer to compete with the banks, right? Because I could ring the bank right now. No one's answering for quite a while.
They're not.
And I'm going to get a machine at least for a few minutes. So it's sort of seems pretty obvious, right? But hey, if you're enjoying this, please leave a review. It's really important to us. We're trying to build momentum around education, and better reviews will get more people coming and listening. It's the implementation. It's obviously that's the science, and that's the part of the success. Bumps in the road. You must have had a few times when you tripped.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Give us a couple of the bad ones.
Oh yeah. The lasting memory ones. When you're ASX listed and COVID rocks up 3 months later, and you go, well, how did I time this thing? And you go, okay, I'm in this forecast period, and everyone's paying me back because they've got access to super fund money. Like, I'm a lending business, and all of a sudden I'm taking savings deposits, which is interesting. I think diversification of product has just been the fundamental key. When you start being distracted by, what else is going on out there and try to grow market share and be relevant. Yeah. One of the big failings for me is just not launching enough products and focusing on being, too fundamentally driven, what the market wants. But product diversification is key. It's the essence of why we exist. It's the passion in the organization. I can tell you now, I've never seen a culture thrive. And you know what's different?
Yeah.
The macro market hasn't changed, but we're launching new products.
Yeah.
And that innovation and aspiration for doing things differently. And now I have this real clear drive of more innovation. It's what I've learned. It's pretty exciting.
A new product, is that come internally, or your client says, I've got a problem here that your product doesn't solve for, and then you come up with a product, or are you more coming up with a product and saying, which way, or is it both?
It's both. Like I can never, whenever I go back and say, well, where did that come from? It was a combination of a few things. Somebody taught me this, and I truly believe in it. You got to go outside.
Yeah.
And outside doesn't just mean outside of your office. It might even mean going to where I recently came from, LA. Go overseas where they might be a bit ahead in certain things you're looking for and learn what they're doing differently and why, and bring that back.
Yeah.
And I promise to you, it is so rewarding.
Yeah, it's good.
When you're sitting self-driverless cars like Waymo, and the thing is literally driving exceptionally well. It's not overly cautious. It's doing what it's, and you can fall asleep and have a nap after your first ride. You're not even thinking about, is this safe or not safe?
Yeah.
When you bring that back and you redefine what AI means to your business, if a car can do what it's doing over in the States, it just, in our way, it just redefines how we should think about automation. And so sometimes that's the genesis of these things. It's like just interpretation of what else is going on out there.
That's the benefit of being a founder, running your own business. You can see innovation and you can actually do something about it. You can bring it home. You can chat to the team, work out how you can implement.
Yeah, the freedom to do that is, we can't take it for granted, and we must leverage it.
Yeah.
If you are a challenger business, that freedom and innovation of new products and new ideas, it's why we exist.
Gotcha. And how about some key learnings? If you to give us 3 things you've learned across the journey.
Capital structure. Number one, get that right. Get your capital structure right. It's like, it's even in your personal life, right? Don't grow. Don't chase an income to grow into your habits. Actually invest in an asset, invest in a capital structure that then you can actually leverage with the course of time. So in business life, capital structure is number one. Talent, absolutely get that right, and trust your gut instinct in many cases on the talent.
Yep.
And the third one is continue to obsess about that customer and doing things differently.
Gotcha. You've got the message nailed. you know what what's key, which is good, right? Many don't. Okay, what legacy are you living and leaving, workplace, personal life?
Legacy is important for me. I want it to be long-lasting. And for me, that means changing the status quo, like impacting people's lives. Like I've said before, giving talent, my team, the opportunity to do something that they think is impossible. And if I stay true to that and in the long-term focus, I truly believe that we will change people's lives. I think giving people access to a product that we think is for everyone, mass market focus, democratization of, financial services is important. The ability for people to achieve their dreams and that ambition of doing something great is what we do.
Right.
Access to capital for everyone is fundamental. And the ability for us to make it more effective, being not only just cheaper, but available when you need it, not difficult to get access to, save you time so you can get on with doing other things that are more meaningful to you.
Yeah.
I think that lasting impact for us is really key.
Right. Okay. Makes sense. We're going to go to a few more lighthearted questions now. But what about the sport? Are you still keeping fit?
Oh, yeah.
You're obviously not playing. You're not playing rugby or anything like that anymore, are you?
No, I got asked to join a local team in Newcastle, and I saw some of those boys, and they were 22 and 25. I thought, this is a really bad idea. So no, thanks for inviting me, but no, that's never going to happen. I'm back in the gym, which is feeling good. Yep. Longevity is quite an interesting concept that I've started learning quite a bit about. People taking, certain steps to having all sorts of devices connected to you, sleeping patterns, heart rate variability, all those things are combined kind of overall well-being of how I think about living. And now it's just trying to survive the next triathlon. So I'm up to my third one now. One's coming up in a few months' time, and it's quite difficult to get into the water now and crank out a few kilometers, but that's my focus.
That's brilliant. It's 3 better than most. But what about you've often noticed MoneyMe's got some impressive advertising on the AFL. Do you watch a few games of AFL as well?
Oh yeah, I still haven't understood that game, but there's these tall athletes that can run and effectively sprint for 14 kilometers is impressive. That's a sport to be reckoned with. And it's so amazing when you think about Australia. It's cornered a sport. It's just in Australia. True. And at the MCG, when we put out a MoneyMe message, we got nearly 100,000 in-person viewing. Yeah, and then we've got 1.2 million people watching it on television. People think television's dead, not for sport. That thing's going to go on and on. So I think we found a trick there. It's working. Yeah,
I can say that we've been working together, between iPartners and MoneyMe. Yeah. And I'll come to work on Monday. The amount of people tell me they saw your advertising at the footy.
Working.
It clearly works, right?
Yeah, it does. Really does.
Okay, a couple of short questions. What was your first job? Young as you need to go.
That's an embarrassing one to answer. So first job, no judgment, I was a model.
Oh, well, good on you. Everyone's going to make $1.
That's right.
Seems like a good job, though. Piece of advice for your younger self.
Be bolder.
Yep. Got that one.
And do it earlier.
Yeah. What motivates you most as a person?
I love being a dad. I love waking up in the morning and speaking to my friends that I get the opportunity to work with and do something different every day.
Brilliant. Tips for driving long-term wealth?
Invest. Yeah. Don't just follow your income. Your lifestyle creep is dangerous if you don't invest. So invest early.
Totally agree. This is sort of obviously contra this question. Biggest mistake you see people make?
Not investing.
Yeah, spending more than what they earn.
Spending what they earn. Yeah, just invest early.
We touched on this earlier. So when you're not working, how do you like to spend your time?
Oh, it's being a dad. Yeah. So I got an 8 and a 10-year-old, and that's pretty remarkable. And then, of course, when I'm not at work, I'm still at work, which I enjoy a lot. Yeah. And then, the gym factor is pretty good.
Yeah. That's the thing about the new workplace. It's kind of, you're always at work when you're at work or at home, but actually the flexibility, though, it's pretty amazing.
Oh, it's incredible. And you learn, I'm still trying to figure it out. Like, how effective am I in 8 hours versus 4? Yeah. And what is that balance? Yeah. Like, we grew up where, unless we are punching out 12-hour days, are we missing a trick? And maybe we just get the advantage of freedom now. But just trying to grapple with what that is. But at the end of the day, the effectiveness, I'm not sure how time or place is the equation, but just something interesting.
I was chatting to a mate of mine who's still working banking. I said, what time did we used to start work? And he said, we were still coming in at 7. Yeah. I think about it, we're probably leaving at 7 at night. But just changing it. You can sort of do a few hours at home, work from 6 to 8, go in the office. I think productivity from my perspective and people around me, I think it improves via that flexibility. Yeah. Because you can tailor your day to suit your personal habits, right? Some people like getting up early. Some people like staying up late. And everyone can play their own game as long as they're delivering to whatever their KPIs or goals or objectives or whatever they may be. It's the end game rather than the demonstrating a game.
Couldn't be said better. Yeah. The way I think about it is we all have, learned experiences and, we chase certain things of learning, but we don't actually have a strategy for the most valuable thing, which is time. Yeah. Like we learn asset management, right? Yeah. But isn't time the most important and valuable asset? It's like, well, what's the thesis on managing the most effective use of time? And is it morning, evening? I don't know. Diversification? Who knows? Let's figure it out.
Yeah, it's good. Very good. Appreciate you coming on the show, Clay.
Travis, it's a pleasure.
So those who want to catch up with Clay, you can connect with him on LinkedIn, but I really appreciate you coming on.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you, mate.
Hey, if you're enjoying this, please leave a review. It's really important to us. We're trying to build momentum around education, and better reviews will get more people coming and listening.